So before we get into the large group discussion of this, I'd like you to break into groups of just 2 or 3. Maybe just turn towards the people in your row or the people that you're sitting next to and kind of discuss your initial reaction and response to this. What sticks out, what settles with you, what questions do you have. So discuss it amongst yourselves for a few minutes before we bring it to the large group, please. The attachment to somebody than it is than to the attachment to a substance, or the kind of addiction to emotions, or is a little bit different, the languaging, but I think that the practices don't change all that much. But again, I haven't thought of it that much. I guess I'm in this way looking at it much more towards substance addiction. And that my hope is if this gets sussed out and developed, just like the 12 steps have then been applied and developed to Al-Anon's, that the same thing could happen, with just some shifting perspectives of it. I guess it's too preliminary, and I would like for something like this to be, for all forms of addictive behaviors, and I think that we can do it, but it's so much easier if you're just talking about, because it's the issues are different on some level when it's food or where you can't have an abstinence-based model. Drugs and alcohol, abstinence. You can move towards abstinence. You can't stop eating. You probably aren't going to stop having relationships. So you can't really have abstinence from people. Well, you could maybe, but not really the goal. So I hope it gets developed in that way. Please, Trudy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, in response to what you just said, by the way, I think it's beautiful. I really like it. It's really great. And of course, being a Buddhist practitioner, I really love it. But I'm speaking from the Al-Anon side of things, and maybe what you're saying, because you can absolutely abstain, makes it seem more black or white, either or. Because my experience in Al-Anon, now I was on the East Coast when I was in Al-Anon intensive care, so I don't know actually so much about it here in LA. But it wasn't very God-oriented or theistic. We didn't say the Lord's Prayer, which I think is a big obstacle. And we had a lot of people who talked about their higher power as being their Sangha. There were a lot of Buddhists. I mean, so I didn't have that reaction in a way. So it may be just by definition, because you can't abstain from relationship and you can't abstain, that it has to be more nuanced. Do you know what? I don't know, I just was thinking of that when you were talking.
Yeah. One of the thoughts, I don't know how much this applies, but one of the thoughts that just came to me was the sort of Al-Anon piece is a little bit like all Buddhist practice around pleasure and pain. You can't abstain. There is no abstinence, right? The path is about ending suffering, not getting rid of pain. And so I think there's something there connected where no matter what, you're not going to escape the unpleasant experience of a human body and unpleasant emotions perhaps, but that there's a wise, a recovered potential, a wise way to meet the emotions and the sensations and the unpleasant and unpleasant experiences. You can't just stop.
Well, if this continues, this wonderful effort of today, I'd be interested in working together with you on the Al-Anon piece.
Yes,
yeah.
Please. Kevin was just saying it has to be a book. And he might be right. That something like this, this is just such an outline. and and Santikara, both of them were saying, there's so many pieces that have to be sussed out, that have to be concretized on some level. This is how you do it. This is how it works. These are the practices to apply. And my comment to them, and I agree, maybe it does have to be a book, was that I'm not so sure that I want to be the sole author of something like that.
A meeting, a book.
Yeah, something like supposedly the basic text of AA was, which is, you know, the first 100 women and men who came together and sort of did this together, wrote this book. And so I'd be much more interested in the people in this room and the other people in this world who have a kind of a combined development of a book around this stuff rather than some individual trying to write.
What I would offer, just from my own experience of being in substance recovery and behavior program, is the whole idea about the middle way between repressing and acting out, and that's what I've worked on in my behavior stuff, is that there is a middle way between repressing and acting out, and I can be very specific. So that might be.
That's nice. Yeah.
Was there somewhere specific that it landed in the in the outline?
I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it through. I would see that, but that's just what came up for me. And to be thinking about this, because I happen to be in both areas, the whole middle way idea has been extremely useful to me.
Sure.
In my Buddhist recovery.
Good.
I wanted to say from my experience in Al-Anon,
Yeah.
it actually is an abstinence program for me. It's an abstinence from that train of thought that evokes those emotions of attachment and suffering to an individual. So it is an abstinence program.
Abstinence from, and say it again, the train of thought?
From the train of thought, from the thinking center. It is a particular mode of thinking, it's thoughts that drop into my head.
From feeding those type of...
Exactly.
There's also actions. You do have abstinent actions in Al-Anon, what to do and what not to do.
and setting one's own bottom line behaviors,
Yeah.
rather than it being dictated. You have to get divorced from the alcoholic. That's not that. It's more kind of your own bottom line
No, you have to
behaviors.
stop picking up after them and nagging them and fighting and whining. I mean, there's a lot of behavioral actions
Yeah.
that people get addicted to.
In that sense, that even more, it's up to the individual and their mentor or whoever to really come up what is their bottom line behavior in terms of Al-Anon or food addiction or sex addiction.
Yeah.
You asked where it would fit in here, the middle way?
Yeah,
The repression, acting out, continuum, just under one?
Understanding, under view, or
Yeah, understanding necessity of non-harming, harmful actions, often means relapse, harming of oneself, harming others.
Santa Carla?
It also goes under path on the first page. And the original teaching started with the middle way before the Buddha brought up the Four Noble Truths.
So before, as an introductory, before we talk about the Four Truths.
That was the original phrase.
As intro.
And then it flows through every one of the paths. Right means middle way, in a sense. Sama.
Sama is balance, middle way. Okay. Please.
Yeah, a few things kind of taken off. That was commit to the Buddhist path of recovery. Going into recovery, I was blessed with honestly being desperate enough that I didn't give a shit what had to be believed, but I did stay in the needing to have something. You spoke, I'd heard some time ago about externalizing to just get out of yourself, which did help a lot, which has turned into the people in the rooms being my higher power. Because that's all I ever really needed to look to find what I needed to get to survive that day. And the reason I brought up this part was because my first reaction to that was the factioning that is going to happen from, you know, Christian-based or Buddhist-based or anything based. It all stems around saving people from basically dying and harming others. And the enormity of everything that is in here in just a few pages for a person walking in for their first meeting, committing to anything is going to be, I worry about them retracting, because an addict is they're gonna have any excuse. I mean, even years later, there's gonna be friction, or as my teacher says, that rub, that you're not gonna wanna do it because it's something you're feeling is being told that you have to do.
Right. So something in the languaging, I'm not sure. I appreciate that. I'm not sure how to, maybe we could get away from that. Although I am really saying, no, this is a Buddhist approach.
Yeah, no, totally.
And so I'm okay with saying, like, commit to the Buddhist, if you want to. This is an open offering, but commit to the Buddhist practices. But I hear,
I just worry
it could
more
be
about
problematic,
because
yeah.
I chair a first step meeting and watching people coming in, it's shaky ground,
Sure.
very shaky ground.
Maybe there is a way to language it, like the 12 steps are open-minded theism, to have sort of open-minded Buddhism languaging here, without turning it into just mindfulness-based, because I really want to include the Buddhist, all of the Buddhist teachings, and not just bring mindfulness.
Very much so, I agree completely.
Yeah, I agree that there's, Alex?
This is types of this conversation about first coming into a meeting when you're newly sober, whatever that means, have been resonating in a lot of the groups that I've been working with. And some of the discussion has been about having graduated ways of approaching recovery.
Yeah.
For example, a person coming into a 12-step meeting needs the absolute basics. It's like somebody coming into a Buddhist training center and saying, how do I meditate? How do I sit? How do I, down to the basics? And then later, as time goes on, being able to have the confidence and the open-mindedness, if possible, to be able to look at other options instead of becoming stratified into one and not being able to go beyond it.
I really think that this is very important, and I think it's where actually the 12 steps are quite wonderful, because it is progressive and linear. Do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, kind of on some level, and then do all of it, and then live it. But the Eightfold Path, I think we're going to run into a problem here because it's not linear. And it's not do this, this, and this. It's all of this is what is to be developed. All of these spokes are to be developed, and not necessarily in any order. And this one supports this one, and this one supports this one. And so I'm not sure how to suss it out. I'm curious what your thoughts are about how do we suss that graduated training in this way.